Hey, what's happening, guys? It's Dean from Electronisounds. Stick around. Today I'm going to show you how you can write a Dub Techno groove on an iPad using an app called Stay tuned, guys.
Electronisounds audio. You know you need to watch that YouTube channel.
Be sure and subscribe if you're into this kind of content, guys. On this channel, I talk about hardware, I talk about iPads, I talk about music making, I talk about making live jams, I talk about sound design, all that good stuff. Be sure and subscribe, guys. Thanks for joining me today, guys. The first thing we're going to do is just plug into direct sound, and I'm going to give you an example of what the groove we're going to be making sounds like. Show you the individual elements that are making up this groove, guys. We've got a kick drum, we've got a hi-hats loop, we've got a bass sound, we've got a sequencer that's sequencing the bass sound, we've got a dub techno chord, and we've got a sequencer that's sequencing that dub techno chord. We've got a reverb send running the eventide black hole reverb, and we've got a master out bus, which has got a limiter and an EQ on it. Let me break this down for you, guys. The very first thing I did, guys, when creating this groove is I first set on a tempo of 112 beats per minute. The very next thing I did is I wanted to create some sort of a rhythmic groove to sort of build from. So I created a hi-hats loop, which I then resampled and re-imported into the session. Let me go ahead and show you guys, let's see here. Let me solo this hats loop. It's originally created from two AUV3 instruments, which I'll show you in just a moment. And we've got a gentle sidechain pumping effect happening here from the perforator gate effect from Brombos. What we're going to do, guys, is we're going to start a new session, and I'm going to show you how I made this hi-hats loop. Okay, so we've got ourselves a blank session inside of I'm just going to bring this tempo down to 112 beats per minute. I'm going to click on a little plus icon here and insert an audio track. We're going to insert an audio unit extension, and that's going to be Axon 2. This is from Audio Damage, and if you open this up and if you go to the presets, there's actually a preset that's just called Empty Starting Patch. And what I found, guys, is that this really resembles just sort of like a hi-hat pattern. And the bonus here is that it's going to stick to whatever tempo you're working with. It's a little bit of a simplistic pattern, and rather than just get in there and start messing with it inside of the Axon app, I decided to try to add to it instead. So I added a second track. I added another audio unit extension. I scrolled down and we went with the Ruse Maker Noir app, okay? And if you scroll down on this one, it has some presets, and one of them is actually just called hi-hats. And if we turn that preset on, we turn the volume down just a little bit there and press play again, now we've actually got two hi-hat sounds that are going. And this is what I did to create the hi-hat loop, guys, is I just combined these together. I routed them into a master bus and then put a little bit of EQ on that bus so that I could reduce a little bit of the high frequency content and also a little bit of the low frequency content beneath about 500 hertz to eliminate any potential low rumbles that might be coming through. And then I just resampled this loop out and re-imported it into a new session. If you don't know how to make loops in I've got a great video that'll walk you through how to do that process in its entirety. I'll put a little link to that video in the corner. So the next thing I did, guys, was I added a kick drum. We're going to go back to our original session here and I'll show you how I did that. Here we are back in our session again, and you can see that I've inserted a low-pass filter on the hi-hats loop to remove a little bit more of the high frequencies. I'm also using the FabFilter Pro Q3 to tiny little bit raise up some mid-frequencies here, and also reduce quite a bit more of the high-frequency content on those hats. I loaded the Rusemaker Noir app again, guys, and if you click around, there's quite a bit of fun presets here. One of these is just, a basic kick drum preset. And if I go through and mute these other tracks here, whoops, leave that one open. We can now hear our kick and our hats. The kick from Noir was a little bit punchy on the low end, a little bit heavy on the low end, and a little bit lacking in some of this like 2K area where the human ear really hears the punch and transients of a sound like a kick come through. So I reduced the low frequency content and boosted very slightly up here around 2 to 2500K so that the kick drum would come through in the mix but not override the low frequencies of the mix and conflict with the bass line that I've got here. For the bass line, I chose a Synthmaster 1 preset. It's called Bass Deep Down VS. Okay, and what we did on this is we sequenced that. I'm going to unmute this. We sequenced it with the bassline sequencer from Brombos, and I made a 2-bar pattern here that I programmed out inside of the sequencer. And what I really, really like about this, let me just say that again. What I really, really like about the Rosetta bassline sequencer is that you could open up this little virus window, right? And you can change this real-time mutation probability on each of the 8 patterns. This can be set to a different setting. I currently have the note order set to a 6% mutation probability. The accents and the slides, again, also set to 6% chance that they will mutate. So there's a very small chance that this bass line will play in a different note order or have different slide accents. And it's very awesome to have that little bit of extra movement, and I really love the Rosetta sequencers for doing that. So we've again assigned the bassline sequencer to that Synthmaster 1 preset. I've put a high pass filter on this just to get rid of a little bit of the super sub low rumble, and I've actually used 2 instances of the FabFilter Pro Q3. If you look here, you can see that I'm pretty uptight when it comes to EQ, and I will definitely take a lot of extra time and get in there and make very, very finite and subtle adjustments if, that's what I feel that I need to do to sculpt the sounds the way that I want them. So don't be afraid to really get in there and start removing some frequencies from your sounds, guys, and see what that sounds like. I do mostly subtractive EQing, which means that I'm usually removing frequencies. I'm not typically boosting frequencies. And apparently that wasn't enough EQ for my liking because I added a second one, which is further reducing just slightly the low frequency content, and we're boosting just a tiny little bit around 1.5K to help that bass jump through and compete with the other sounds in the mix. To help keep the bass line a little bit steady, I've used the Rough Rider compressor from Audio Damage. This is a free compressor, and if you don't have this, I highly recommend you jet over to the App Store and pick it up. I use this pretty much all the time when I need a compressor, and it is a fantastic compressor. It comes highly recommended from me, guys. Okay, so let's take a look here at what the next thing is. The next thing is the dub chord that I added, and let's check that out. I loaded up an instance of Synthmaster Player. You might notice that I'm a real big fan of the KV331 audio, synthesizers, the Synthmaster Player, and also the Synthmaster 1. I've got some presets that I programmed that are available in the desktop version of Synthmaster 1, and they will be coming to the iOS version of Synthmaster 1, hopefully very soon, so keep your eyes out for that. I'll definitely be showing those in a video when those are available, guys. I'm using a preset here. This is from the free version of Synthmaster 1, and this is just called Lead Almighty Supersaw, and you can't really argue with that, right? It's the Almighty Supersaw. What I'm doing is I'm using a cells sequencer from Brombos Rosetta Suite to sequence this, and literally all it is doing is it's playing a whole bunch of rests until it gets to this cell right here, at which point it's holding an F minor chord, well, not holding, but tapping an F minor chord rather, And that's it. So every 2 bars, we get this sequencer triggering an F minor chord on the Synth Master player. You can see that I've also used the Rough Rider compressor from Audio Damage on this, just to help kind of keep that chord, the velocity and amplitude of that in line with the rest of my mix. And I've also done some pretty serious EQ work here to kind of tame some mid frequencies and also reduce those low frequencies and tame a little bit of the high frequency content. I find that with Dub Techno, guys, I'm often curbing and, you know, bringing down the high frequency content in these tracks. It's not really meant to sort of push through like big EDM stadium tracks per se. This is more couch music than club music, and it's definitely a chilled type of music that definitely benefits from a little bit of shaving off on some of those high end frequencies. Here I've set up a reverb send, guys, on bus A, and I'm using the Black Hole reverb from Eventide Audio. This is pretty much my go-to reverb these days on iOS. It is absolutely fantastic, and you certainly can't go wrong with the Black Hole reverb. I'm sending a little bit of the dub chord to that reverb to get some reverb on there. If I solo the chord here, if we wait till that second bar, it punches through and you get the effect of the black hole there. Now if I take this off, you'll hear how dry it is in comparison. Actually, it's surprisingly not dry. There must be quite a bit of reverb coming through from the Synth Master player. And in fact, there definitely is here. An echo as well, creating that little extra hit at the end. And in the mix, it just kind of glides over the mix. Those tiny little bit of variations that are coming through on the bass line, thanks to the bassline sequencer, you know, from the Rosetta suite, those tiny little variations really help the dub chord sail over the top of this and keep the listener's interest, because you've got that tiny little bit of movement. I could easily go in, you know, to the bassline sequencer. We could copy this pattern here, and I could paste that into the second pattern and make a variation of that, tell it to swap back and forth between them, give me even more variation in this. I've routed all of the channels through the master bus, which is running first through this Pro Q3 from FabFilter, and I've reduced the low frequency content on the whole mix, and reduced the high frequency content on the whole mix just a little. And I'm bringing up, which I hardly ever do, bringing up a little bit of boost in the whole midsection here to kind of help that section of the frequency range pop through the track a little bit. And lastly, guys, we've got the limiter on the master bus. This is from for Pete's sake, I can't remember who it's from, and let's find out, because I really want you to know. It's from Amazing Noises, guys. This is my go-to limiter. I'm using this on every single track that I make, either in Beatmaker 3 or in OM. It is always going to be on my master bus to help protect my ears, my headphones, and my speakers, guys. This is going to protect any rogue frequencies from just literally like screaming out of your mix. Like I say, you're, you know, flipping through presets, and one preset is a lot louder than, say, some of the others. That could really damage your ears or your headphones or your speakers. And using this limiter so that the output doesn't go over negative 5 dBs is really going to help that. I also like to use a little bit of the saturation on this, and I'll adjust the input gain as needed so that we're getting a tiny little bit of attenuation on the limiter, but never more than about negative 5 decibels of attenuation on that. And this is what I did, guys, to put this together. I put this together so that I could sort of noodle over it for the Rosetta rotary plugin effect video, so I could help show that effect in a more, you know, context that's a little bit more my style. If you missed that one, I'm going to put a link to that video up here in the corner. The the Eventide rotary plugin. It's a Leslie speaker emulation. Very cool plugin. So what I did here, guys, is I just recorded the master bus out on this, and, you know, created a loop inside of OM. Then I just started with a blank session, imported that loop, and then I created the sound to solo over that loop with. I hope you guys have found this useful, and until next time, thanks for watching. Are you connected up with me on the other social media platforms, guys? I'm also on Instagram as Electronisounds, Twitter as Electronisounds, and Facebook as Electronisounds. Let's get connected, guys. I'm going to put some links on the card coming up.